is hard work. Must be time for lunch. My body transforms the food that I eat into energy that my muscles can use. This is actually pretty similar to the way modern society uses energy. We take a fuel source such as coal, oil or gas and transform it into forms of energy like electricity that we use in our everyday lives. But before you start to assume that I'm only talking about electricity, don't forget the petrol for our cars and the gas for our stoves and heaters.
This chart shows the sources of the world's energy use. Oil, coal and gas make up 80% of the total use, and there's something they have in common. They're fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels were formed millions of years ago under the Earth's crust from the remains of plants and animals. So if you were left here for a few million years and the conditions were right, you too could become a drop of oil or a lump of coal. But before you get too excited about that, I should explain that there are a few problems with our use of fossil fuels. Come back out and I'll explain. Okay, the first problem is that fossil fuels are eventually going to run out. For example, it's been estimated that the world's oil reserves may only last another 40 years. What are we going to do then? More digging won't help us.
Another problem is the uneven distribution of fossil fuels throughout the world. Almost 65% of the world's oil reserves are in the Middle East. Not surprisingly, many countries feel very uncomfortable about relying on such a politically unstable region for such a vital resource.
The use of fossil fuels also encourages the centralisation of power supply, resulting in large power stations run by multinational corporations. This type of infrastructure is vulnerable to economic fluctuations, terrorism, accidents, and natural disasters. This whole helps me explain another major problem with fossil fuels: pollution. When we dig them out of the ground, we often pollute the land. When we burn them in cars, factories and power stations, we pollute the air, especially in urban areas. And when this air pollution falls as rain, we pollute our lakes, rivers and oceans. Okay, it's just about ready. In a moment, you'll see why I've been digging this hole, but first, you need to understand how fossil fuels contribute to a serious problem facing the world in the 21st century: global warming. There are a variety of greenhouse gases contributing to global warming, but one of the biggest culprits is carbon dioxide. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 280 parts per million. It's now over 350 parts per million, and much of this increase is due to the burning of fossil fuels. And if you think that global warming is all speculation, then consider this. 9 out of the 10 warmest years ever recorded have occurred in the last decade. Virtually all scientists involved in work on climate think we should be taking action now to avert disaster in the future.
Australia is a comparatively small producer of greenhouse gases, accounting for 1.4% of total world emissions. But if we look at this figure on a per capita basis, we're the highest greenhouse gas contributor in the world. This is mainly due to our reliance on coal, which produces over 80% of our electricity. Coal creates the most greenhouse gas emissions of all the fossil fuels, especially when used for electricity production.
The reason I dug the hole was to plant this tree. As it grows, it will absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Planting trees